I'm here with Matterall, who's going to be in and out, and Maniska doing a camera view on IGE, the Keepstar timer, for those that are unable to see it. Just going to have a chill stream, answer any questions you guys have, and just kind of watch the fight unfold. Locals currently at 1,900 people. Sully, I did.
Check.
Good.
So I don't even think the timer is out yet, and no, the timer's not even out, and we're almost at a 2,000 local, which is ahead of yesterday. 3 minutes and 15 seconds to go. Let's do a scan we have so far. $482 carries on.
It looks like the carriers are the go-to choice right now for structure timers, be it wherever. It looks like this go-to.
Yeah, the main benefit is that drone swarm that you can see there. That's just loaded in. There is literally zero thing. The Keepstar, so the carriers are between 1,500 and 2K away from this Keepstar. So there is very little threat to the carriers from the Keepstar. Well, there's no threat from the Keepstar itself. There's very little from attackers because they are on their own Astra house, so they can tether if needed once they no longer aggression or their NSA is active. You just see, like we had really yesterday, you see Einherji and Templar fighters mainly being used, so they are boosted out of range of the PDS module from the Keepstar, so the Keepstar cannot damage them. There are other ones present, such as there are some furbolgs just there. They will more than likely be safe because of different fittings, but there is just going to be a massive drone swarm as it was yesterday.
It looks like they still produce tons of tie-dye, though.
Yeah, tie-dye, because obviously it has to calculate all the entities, so tie-dye does end up going up more and more with having all of these drones launched, but this node I imagine's been reinforced because of this fight, so tie-dye should hopefully be settling out once they all start getting in position, the attack comes underway. It is mere seconds from exiting reinforced. So this Keepstar's quite a big one as well, with it being initiative's initial war staging. Um, I have watched it for the last few hours, and I have seen Supers and Titans leaving this grid. Obviously, they've been told your station's at risk. Kind of get out now whilst you still can. Otherwise, they would have been put into asset safety, or even the worst case scenario, if that is if the pilot is docked in is in the ship when it is destroyed, they then will appear in space where the Keepstar was. At least that used to be the next. I may be mistaken. One day.
I think it still works that way because I lost a ship that way not too long ago.
Yeah. When the low sec Keepstars got moved and rearranged, I had a very fun time of figuring out when it was safe for me to move a few Supers and Titans of me and my friends. Yeah, it wasn't a fun time getting them out, that's for sure, because people were planning on catching us at that time.
Definitely from then on out, I started mothballing any alts I wasn't going to be using in actual stations.
We've just hit 21. We're just about to hit 21 in local, 2100. So
Right. I think for it to break much more than that, there's going to have to be some type of the Imperium's going to need to come in, and don't know what they are.
I think as well, groups are still coming this way. It does have less of a novelty factor, like Billy said on the previous stream. It is no longer the first one, so there is that less of a novelty thing of first Keepstar to die in this war. So I think it still will have. There still will be some impact on it, but I'd like to see us break 4K if there are defenders for this Keepstar, and I think we will break 4K. I think if it goes undefended, I think we'll probably be looking at around about 3K mark. Finally, old kill mail.
So it has come out and it has been paused. So
Yep, it has been paused. I'll show all brackets. See that fighter swarm is center
yes,
that is
the fire.
beginning to developable. So the stream will be a lot more smoother than I one yesterday. This time yesterday, I was probably setting around about 5 FPS, but due to graphic changes and me doing some things in the system, most notably clearing up more RAM available, um, the FPS should hopefully stay around about 15 to 20 mark, even if we do hit as many as yesterday. You can see there, slowly beginning to form a ball.
As long as the FPS is in sync with the tie-dye, it's fine, right?
Yeah, that is the ironic thing. Is yeah,
5 FPS, well, that's still faster than the tie-dye, so it's fine. It does look really good with the whole globe effect when it just rains down.
Almost looks like Space Invaders, the little fighter icons.
it's interesting that the Templars that don't have any standings are likely been launched due to tie-dye. They've likely been launched with no standings, so players will be seeing them as neutral, not just me. That's a very old bug in Eve that used to occur many years ago. But the PDS system of the Keepstar, I've just noticed, is active and firing. See all those little scattering effects. So I have a feeling that some fighters will be being hit by that. Pilots who weren't prepared, or who have just made mistakes in their fighter selection. So
Yes, and each one of these fighters can be controlled individually. So that's why it adds extra lag versus like a drone.
yeah, each squadron, yeah. See, I don't have any models on today, so they just look like dots in the moment. But yeah. It's interesting to see. You can see there we have two different waves. So we have the Einherjes at the bottom, Templars, but then you also have these ones up above. And I think that'll be due to the pilots and their different ship fits. Because obviously they may have one more tracking computer, so they'll have a longer range on their fighters. So they obviously there's going to look to be at least a very thin layer of a second ball around this main.
I recall this was a few years ago, but there was some controversy over setting your fighters to orbit outside of the PDS range on purpose. I'm not sure how true that was, but apparently that was not liked by CCP.
I think it's a bit of both. I don't think it's a liked thing, but it's an unintended mechanic of the game, in the sense that it's not abusing a mechanic. It's realizing, oh, that only hits. It's the same reason of having long range guns in a fight. Is if you can shoot your enemy from 100 kilometers, but they can only shoot you from 50, just stay at 100 kilometers then, and you will be able to apply damage, and they can't. It's a similar thing here. I think in relation to the last stream as well with DVRB, I think there is a need to change up that mechanic because obviously this isn't a very defendable fight for most groups because obviously the Keepstar is just unable to damage these fighters, which are applying all of the damage to the Keepstar. And you can see there's a goon fleet on the bottom there, as local is now scrolling exponentially because goon swarm generally like to scroll local. So move over to that one.
The whole thing needs a shake up, right?
Yeah.
It's just fundamentally broken. It's the same with the whole damage cap. Even though I can see why it's been introduced, I do think there's something fundamentally wrong about it because it basically means that if you show up with 3,000 dudes, it just doesn't change how fast you take it down. It's basically to get there to horn the kill mill, which is bullshit. It's like it should have an effect to show up in force. It makes no sense that it doesn't.
Yeah, so an instant tactic will be whether. So the big thing with the PDS is obviously it doesn't differentiate who it hits. It hits everyone in range. I believe this Keepstar will probably have about a 30-kilometer range. So if that Goonswarm fleet untethers, they're immediately going to start taking damage from that. So it'll be interesting to see if they turn off the PDS module so Goonswarm can have their fleet begin to clear out these fighters because they're in small, nice, nimble little harpies, Ares, maledictions, things like that. Small little frigates that are designed to kind of do damage to these.
But I still don't think there's enough numbers. Just looking at the local that they're going to have a real effect on the outcome of the timer.
I don't think it will so much have an outcome on the timer, but I think it will start causing them issues with fighters because obviously carriers only have a finite amount. I believe you can probably have 7 to 9 full squadrons in your carrier now, with max skills. So I think
Actually, they increased the fighter hold of the Chimera and the Archons.
Yeah, I think that was to bring it online with the Nidhogger and Thanatos. So
That's correct.
I think it's 7 to 9 full squadrons. So if they're able to destroy enough squadrons of fighters, then effectively the carrier will have to leave and come back in order to maintain its damage because without any fighters, the carriers do no damage. As well as obviously you then also have the impact of there is a long travel time from these fighters. So all of these ones up here.
Question: Is that so? That means only one or something reloads, right?
Between 2 and 3 full reloads of squadrons, yes.
And side-eye, that can be not happening at all. They can just get hung up trying to reload.
Yeah, I believe it's about 20 seconds to 30 seconds for a full rearm of squadrons. So in tie-dye, that is 2 to 5 minutes.
Sure, they have trucks set up with fighters in them. They can go, drop fighters next to the carriers that need them if they run out.
I imagine they will. They brought out some Rorquals yesterday, which would probably been that thing. I don't see any at the moment on grid, but I say there's no reason they couldn't have something brought in, extra fighters being brought in, things like that.
I think they should actually have bigger holes. I think there's something fundamentally wrong about the way that CCP basically decides how much can be in something, because physically, I think there should be more than enough room for more fighters, right, in the actual ships. If you start actually comparing to how big they are compared to how big the carrier is, right?
Yeah. The size modelling of Eve is it's been promised many moons ago of rebalancing on sizes. For example, an Apostle is bigger than a Super Capital.
Yeah, and it's the same with the number of Titans you can dock in a Keepstar, right? If you look at the physical size, it makes no sense that they can hold that
many. There will always be an issue. I've never liked the fact that a Macarial is bigger than a carrier in certain places, like, bigger than a Chimera and an Archon. The Apostle dwarfs every single capital apart from a Titan.
Marshall is also really big.
Yeah, it's never really made sense on the standpoint of physical size. So there has been a rebalance in the works, I believe, for many years from CCP, stating they
really
want to address this, but
I think it's actually an important thing. I know that they have kept postponing it, but I do think that for immersion, I think it's very important that these things are kind of correct. If I'm not completely mistaken, they were a lot more correct before we started piling new ships and new hulls on the game.
yeah, before the factors came in, the balance of size wasn't ever really. It was an issue, but it wasn't a mainstream issue. Since Fax's introduction is when people kind of realized, hang on, like if you've ever been in a sitting in a fax pilot in a citadel or a station, is you cannot see the rest of the station. All you see is your ship. It is too large for the dock inside. So, question in chat from Merkin asked, they said they don't care. They would release angel caps 3 to 4 years ago. The problem I think they found with the capitals is the same one they had with the Serpentis caps, which is when they put them into the LP store, it went and completely went against what they expected. And now vendettas and things like that are too common. So then they tried it into the NPC Satios with the Greasters and Blood Raiders. That has the same effect of initially spawning them in their home regions didn't make sense, didn't work, made it a monopoly for two groups. Therefore, they made them spawn in every region. And again, it's still not worked because they're still not an engaging content. A Moloch still costing 400, 500 billion is still too much. So I don't think they have a good method to release them that makes them reasonable on the price bracket.
Yeah, and the Morgan's comment about fixing and rebalancing and iteration. The problem for CCP is that when they do that, they always get some backlash, right? It's people are so change averse that even if they say, "Oh, please fix the imbalance," when they then go and do it, there's just so many people that are going to be angry about the change that they bring about. There's just not enough there's too many never nerfers in EVE Online to effectively rebalance the game, which is why they are kind of squeamish about it.
I mean, I think the Faction Titans should be around about the 250 to 300 billion mark.
The price ranges are ridiculous, and this is also the skill requirements are also ridiculous, right? When it comes to building them, these things have just never been properly discussed and fixed. I think I had this talk when Matterall had over invested in Macarial prints. I think it's a horror that we could pump them out almost more effectively than say T2, right? That's just silly. It's just a complete misbalance of the game design that you have this superior ship that is actually easier to both source and build.
Yeah.
Well, the T2 battleships are kind of niche, right? The Marauders and the Black Ops.
Well,
Yeah,
the point is that a faction thing that is superior to everything else should also have the requirements in production
My
and
big,
production value
thick
and bottlenecks to actually build. It makes no sense that that it's almost cheaper to use these in doctrines than say Tech 2.
yeah,
And the ammo is just the opposite, right? The faction ammo is way higher than the Tech 2 ammo.
yeah. That's the ammo's more down to. I always see that more down to the skill requirement of it because it's easier to use faction ammo than it is for T2 guns. Even with T2 guns, you would still use faction ammo in certain situations rather than T2. The availability of minerals for availability, especially for with major groups like the Imperium being in Delve and Legacy and Fire being over where in their situations for the Mercurial blueprints, it's the availability is too high. So they do need to like Merker said about dropping the faction BBC rates for the
Well, they
with
have. I
yeah
mean, that's been nerfed hardcore. The spawn of 10 out of 10s has been nerfed, and also with the changes to the bookmarks, that kind of hurt how easy it is to actually sell a bookmark if you're not want to run it yourself. So a lot of people are probably not even selling them anymore. So there
but
is
The
some.
problem is that CCP can't solve it by nerfing something statically. It has to go to some sort of dynamic model. It's the same with the whole scarcity thing that they're doing because they basically just reduced it everywhere equally. It doesn't really have any meaningful change. It doesn't change anything. And it's the same if you do the drop rates because players can just adapt and just add more activity to the same faucet and just get exactly the same result.
yeah, and you also do end up with things in situations such as these changes are very hard to do. One major one, for example, is Titan changes. CCP had to be very careful about planning and testing these changes because imagine if they said tomorrow, okay, we're dropping the BBC drop rate of all materials, then someone who has a large amount of risk or has a large amount of material BPCs has just gone from them being worth 150 each to being worth 200, 250. These changes are majorly impactful because of a prime example is the T3 change they did for fitting and hardeners when they made that change up. The Loki fleets are no longer really used by wormholers because a Loki is so difficult to fit now because of the resistance change.
That was an equal nerf across the board, though.
But that small change had a massive impact. So imagine the BPC change would be the same thing. It would be massively impactful. I remember a while ago, I can't remember which entity it was, but basically said we're no longer running this doctrine because we can't get enough of the ships at a reasonable price. I believe it was the Imperium with their APOC. APOC?
Navy. I think it was a Navy ship.
Yeah, APOC Navy. They couldn't get enough of the BPCs to stock up their ships.
That's on a totally different scale than
Yeah,
most people.
but it would
Like
be
the Valgorns, right?
yeah, but it would be the same thing as if they changed the BPC rate. Then you'd end up with the same situation.
And this is how it should be, right? Because the extremely, well, at least on paper, rare stuff should be something that's fundamentally only seen in, say, small gangs or solo, right? Shouldn't be doctrine ships because they should be too rare and too expensive to even be considered into doctrines.
Well, yeah, that's what kind of killed Rooks and Kings, right? And their play style was like everybody was able to fly the ships that they were able to fly, and their advantage was going.
I
Pretty much.
remember a time when I first started playing the game, I was ratting in Great Wildlands places, and I had a faction battleship drop me a Mercurial BPC, and that was worth $1 billion ISK back then. So,
Wow.
question in chat from Panzia: how was the Loki nerf? The Loki nerf wasn't. I don't think it was directly responsible for it. I think it was the mix of the resistance changes as well as the changes they did to T3s and their fitting availability. Just meant that the you didn't have as much hit points on the Loki, so you couldn't really effectively use them in fleets. Just made it so they were incredibly difficult to fit. They weren't as tanky as before. They didn't really have the same impact as before. So then the natural progression changed to Munins, which is why we see a lot of Munin fleets now, because the Munin isn't just the heavy assault cruiser counterpart for the Loki.
T3Cs are just in a bad spot right now. Again, I feel, which they'll get to them, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I think that's actually very high priority. Again, back to the whole storm thing and the potential of fixing up wormholes a bit. I think T3s are definitely something that they are considering, and I hope they actually bring out some more T3 ships and hulls. Well, variations.
I think they should also maybe drop the SP loss on those because it really at this point it's just you have to go and buy an injector or something. It's just an extra S cost on top of losing the hull.
I don't think they should remove the SP loss on them. I think rather than the introduction of T3s, is they need to have their niche role. Previously, T3 cruisers were great for Black Ops, and they made it so, yes, they were less tanky by swapping around the subsystems, going from 5 to 4. But that had a huge impact as well on things like solo T3s for killing Latin ships, because they were now able to apply incredible damage, especially the Proteus was able to get over 1,000 DPS while still being a cloaky ship, which is a very big thing. When they did the resistance nerf for the modules, it made it because they don't have the same bonus as T2. Like naturally, T2 ships have a better resist profile, which didn't get altered. So T3s just didn't have that same buffer that T2s did. T2 ships still had their natural resists, whereas T3s didn't. I think if they brought that up in line, making it so T3 ships have the same resist profile as T2s, it would be quite interesting. So just what you see on stream is you see a goon swarm interceptor gang of Ares mainly, just being annoying for these fighters. So you see they've got a squadron of Einherji ones, so they've got a warp disruptor. So that squadron cannot go anywhere. They cannot warp away. They could only slow boat back up to the carrier, some 300, 400 kilometers away. So they are just here killing fighters on the way down, ideally trying to stop them as they get into the Keepstar, as well as costing a miss, because that's 9 fighters in that squadron, I believe. You double check.
That's
9, yeah. So you have 9 in Hergy 1 fighters in each squadron. So if they kill one squadron, they kill 9. And like we said previously, it's between 2 and 4 million ISK a fighter. So that's between 20 and 40 million ISK that they're destroying there, just naturally on their way down to the Keepstar.
the tech ones aren't quite as expensive, but yeah, it's still around 12 mil per squadron.
Yeah, Eve puts the estimated value of them at 4.2 million each. That's why I gave the buffer. Yeah, it's a drop in the ocean for the amount of fighters that are here, but at the same time, it does mean that it is slightly hassled, especially when you also consider that's a small group there. There is a rather large group of cormorants just undocked from Bastion, Swarm, which is again could be doing the same thing of just causing havoc with these fighters.
Well, I mean, this way they're not getting it for free either, right?
Yeah. I believe in an armor reinforced timer on, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was IGE or another Citadel, 176 squadrons of light fighters died. because of the defensive fleets just killing them. Cormorants are especially good at that, so I'll be interested to see what this cormorant fleet does if it bounce around stuff.
How big a fleet would you need to actually bring in if you wanted to slightly and semi-effectively stop the fighter fountain?
So it's an interesting thing. The fighters, it's not possible to kill a squadron instantly. They do have a kind of damage cap, like a soft damage cap, so that it does take time for you to kill the entire squadron. But I think if this with this cormorant fleet and with this interceptor fleet, if they work together and was efficient at getting things done, they could put a sizable dent in these fighters. I don't think it would be enough to stop the Keepstar from being killed, but it will definitely slow it down.
So how many would you need to actually almost stop it?
If they had, I would say between 500 and 750 pilots on the defensive side, um, as a probably say close to 500 being a good number, 750 being nothing will get past. They could really stop all these fighters.
How efficient would that be? And because then that would require the attackers to actually bring something in to take them off, right?
So cormorants, I've said this previously before the war, being in Razor, live over in Smoventoriad, Planet Horde prior to the war would often bring cormorant fleets over, and they were a nuisance to deal with until we decided with our FCs just to start running at them with cormorants. So we did the same thing they did. We just formed cormorants against them, and they were some of the fun, best fights I've had this year so far. Just brawling us versus them in cormorants, and these fights, we wiping out entire Pandemic Horde fleet was maybe 1.5 bill. The most one of my pilots had a bug where he didn't change his clone didn't change out when he clone jumped, and he lost a Titan pod, a high grade slave set or amulet set, sorry, which did get reimbursed, but that one pod cost more than 3 corn fleets combined.
No.
So they are very ISK efficient. Each one of those cormorants is between 5 and 10 million ISK at maximum. So if they kill one squadron per cormorant, they are 3 times in their fleet. Ooh, you can see there the Keepstar has just Doomsdayed. James Zippo in the Jackdaw was the one that was hit by the Doomsday.
And this was the reverse of what happened with the timer for Snuff's Fortizar earlier this morning.
This is also a bit of training, right, for both parties for when the actual fighting starts in potentially in Delft proper.
Yeah, it is. Lord Kalis has asked if this is the IG Keepstar. It is, and it is a good set of training as well. Not only for small fleets, Pandemic Horde. I have often referred new pilots who approach me for places to go who are just new to the game. I quite like to put them towards Brave Newbies, Pandemic Horde, because they are designed to pick people up and carry them through, help them grow into the pilots in Aviv.
Also, the Rogue University has a great program.
Yes. But it is incredibly fun, and like I say, not often you actually ever have to man a Keepstar in a defensive fashion. So, a lot of initiative members I've spoke to have had a lot of fun in people that haven't really gunned fought as ours. They kind of get taken under someone's wings, and they then sit in the gunner seat while someone tells them, "Oh, you want to do this, this, and this," while sat tethered. And pilots that wouldn't normally get to fly gunner Fortizar against a capital fleet then get to gunner Fortizar and see what it's like, see how they handle, because it's a very surreal thing flying citadels, gunning them, because it's not like any ship or anything particular like old where we used to have the pos gunners. It's completely new. It's like a weird kind of mix of a ship and a station.
Sully, what's the skill requirements for these cormorant bits? This is alpha range, right?
Yeah, if you do the recruiter friend program, you get a 3 million skill points, even if you don't pay with real life money. So the person who you gets benefits. You will easily be able to fly all the common fits they use within 1 million skill points.
Which means it's effectively free. You can pretty much laterally scale with free
Yep.
accounts and feel these things for free.
Yeah, I do have.
You can't you can't run like free accounts, multi-boss free accounts, right? So you have to
No,
do it when it.
not alphas. Alphas, you are only permitted to use one at a time.
Yeah, I'm
So-
saying it's free. I didn't say free. I said free. It's you can basically be part of the defense without actually sacrificing anything because you're using an alpha. The efficiency is very much in your favor. So this type of strategy is almost like a little bit of attrition stuff, right?
Absolutely, that'll work great if you had everybody train up an alpha Qadari pilot with a, destroyer just docked wherever it needs to be. Yeah, definitely. And
Because
also,
at least you stop this strategy, right? And require some more stuff to be fielded. So you actually almost demand escalation.
looks like they're warping the fleet down to deal with the destroyers right now. I also like to thank TAU for subscribing. Thanks, man. It's awesome.
I do have. They walked out. So me. Quick, people know who I am.
Because, Sully, if I'm not mistaken, this can almost be at least really pausing things with 250 Cormorant fleets basically using alphas. That's on standby from Dell pretty much all the time, right? That's like easy mode. So you can almost always, if not stop, you can at least completely delay one Keepstar attack, right?
With enough Cormorant fleets, yes. If there was enough Cormorants here in system to deal with both the defending fleet. So we see here there's a little NC dot Jackdaw gang are now chasing after the Cormorants. Cormorants themselves, with them being destroyers, are small, fast, and agile, and they are a nightmare to catch. So if they brought another one or two fleets of them, then yeah, there would be ability to bounce around with the current force.
But at that rate, they just have to park some battleships at range, right?
Yeah.
And just to keep the timer going.
Yeah, it looks like we're just about to hit the 50% mark on the Keepstar. So the fleets are bouncing around. The Jackdaw fleet has gone over there to the NC dot Astra, little intercept fleet up there. So it, like someone said in chat, it's not a meaningful level at the moment, but it is still, there is still impact being made, even if it is just one carrier pilot has no longer got any squadron. So he then has to arrange to either get some from us, other carriers next to him, or jump out and jump back.
From the defender side, what would completely shift this, right? Like, what would have to warp in for this to become a little bit more exciting, or what would potentially have to undock?
A drone bomb on the carriers.
Yeah, a good bomb on the carriers. So we'll go up and we'll look at carriers up here. So you see they have defensive bubbles up as well as a couple of subcapital fleets here. They have 3 subcap fleets I'm seeing, or 4, or even 5 behind there. So a good dread bomb on these. If you was to drop, say, 30 dreads in a good enough area to catch the bottom half of this Astra House and carriers, 10 to 15 dreadnoughts would begin to cause havoc here. You would lose all of them. There would be very little chance of getting any, but it would immediately take out a large portion of fighters because each of these carriers has their 3 fighter squadrons.
Have
So
to dread bomb the carriers off the grid. Then you'd have to deal with the subcaps because those subcap fleets can warp down and also start attacking the structure, right?
yeah, they could. The subcaps would easily be able to keep the timer paused, but there would be losses from the Keepstar at that stage. The Keepstar is, with its Doomsday, would be taking out 3 to 5, as well as the missiles and the bombs that would launch. Keepstar would be able to fend off more than it currently is, but at the same
Oh,
time, there would need to be a defensive fleet coming in for the Keepstar to really drive home, try and fend off.
so how far away is this system from any staging for the Imperium?
Used to be initiative staging a couple weeks ago.
So initiative, as of a month ago now, I believe, began their withdrawal from Fountain. With only small things moving first. Some Keepstars getting unanchored. D95 Keepstar got unanchored, and non-critical assets or non-expendables.
Just commerce.
Yeah. Then it was beginning to the shift. So they could theoretically be dread bombs in rain, but for the Imperium, they would normally they would have to leave from say 1DQ. They would have to jump up to the Fountain and Delve connecting gate, Stargate through, or midpoint to another system, and then there. So it's not a million miles away, but it's not like they're immediately undocking and jump range at this stage.
Yeah, one of their big dread caches went into asset safety when yesterday's Keepstar was destroyed.
Well, that one was fairly far away from Delve, right?
Yeah, but it was in Fountain, and I think it might have been in range of this one. Fountain
That
is
would be
a pretty long
hilarious.
region, so I'm not sure though.
It would J5A is in range of IGE for Titans Dreads.
So you could actually have asset safety them to this Keepstar.
No, because the asset safety, when an item goes into asset safety, you get 7 days before you can designate a structure in the same system capable of docking. So, for example, it would have to have been a Fortizar in J5A to move those capitals to. If there isn't one, then after, I want to say
20 days.
20 days, it will be automatically moved to the LOSEC station. The closest LOSEC station, which I believe is Velazan, this area.
What percentage is the Keepstar right now?
It's hard to say because me not being friendly with people that like to shoot me, but I would say between 45 and 50%. It's we're over the halfway mark. There is still a good chunk to go.
Oh, there. We just couldn't see it on the stream.
Yeah, you need to have it locked to mouse over the actual percentage, I think.
I'm wondering if someone in our chat maybe in the fight that there was yesterday, and so they may be able to give us an update on percentages. We had a few of the carrier pilots in Twitch chat yesterday, which was incredibly helpful for calling out when it's getting low.
How many people are in that little Corm fleet there?
I'm seeing 45% on Ron USMC's stream.
That's about right. Yeah, it's for what we're seeing here.
It's in his comments though, so
Yeah, Hager 71 as we said, so 45%. I'd probably say let's do a D scan and see, because that should hopefully give us an indication of who's here. I'll put it in Twitch chat. In chat is a link to the D scan. So we currently have 193 destroyers
Yeah,
on
my
grid.
D scan was 179 corms.
I see 186 on.
Yeah, it looked like pretty much a full fleet, probably. Is there any lodge or anything with them, or it's just straight corms?
Normally they are just straight comms because
Normally they don't fly with logic because if they get shot, they die.
yeah, they're cheap enough as well that if you bring a Logi that costs 4 times the cormorant, it would really need to save 4 cormorants, and they're paper thin anyway. So if at any point they broke tether, the PDS from the Keepstar would kill them all before they left, because they are very much paper.
Right. But you'd want to turn the PDS off before you start engaging.
Yes. Currently, the PDS isn't active. We don't see any effect on it. So if the cormorants were to detether, they'd be able to easily fight. I believe that's what their strategy may be, because you see them starting to spread out. I think they may be trying to get into range of being able to shoot the fighters while still maybe in the center of the Keepstar.
So is the Keepstar actually taking damage right now?
It is, yes.
Yeah,
it's real.
It's being. I think the fighters have it at damage cap.
Yep. There's enough fighters here that they will be keeping it at damage cap. I'd probably say there is overkill of about 50 to 75% of these fighters aren't needed just to keep it at damage cap, because it's more means you have worry about the individual less. So if there was minimal amount to keep damage cap and you killed half of them with the Corn Fleet, then obviously you're no longer at damage cap. Here they're well and truly over it to make sure it's at damage cap and being as efficient as possible.
So basically, this is only like hacking away a little bit at the ISK efficiency, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it may end up being an impact of some variation, but I don't think that what they are doing is enough to protect Keepstar. Just to be more of an annoyance nuisance. So we can see there are some cormorants that aren't tethered, so it could realistically be that they are shooting some of the fighters.
That's what they're doing, because the fighters can track the cormorants if they're stationary fairly well.
They can, yeah. So we'll look at this squadron. Um, there are a couple of squadrons amongst the cormorants, or at least there were. They have since this Templar group here from Slice. They are in amongst the cormorants. Very likelihood is they are shooting some of these cormorants, trying to kill them, but it's a very dangerous place for those fighters ones to be, because obviously these cormorants are right up there. So local is at 2041 as well. So it's less than we predicted at the moment. As well, with there being defenders here, the realm of about 200 pilots, there's over 1,000 less attackers here.
Well, they wouldn't get up. This is not like a real earnest defense, right? If they
No.
try to defend in earnest, it would have been 4,000, 5,000 plus, and probably more than that, because both sides would probably drop dread bombs. The attackers have dread bombs on standby just in case the situation unfolded earlier, as we talked about with dreads coming in on the carriers.
Yeah, there is. I imagine in range of this system to jump in, there's probably another 3,000 to 5,000 pilots, all sides. So
As a harassment strategy, is it possible to do something timing wise, like bring in two more fleets of cormorants, and then at the nick of time actually almost deny the reffing?
Not with this many fighters.
it'd be incredibly difficult to do, because once you reach a certain percentage, there's nothing to stop groups just bringing in suicide dreadnoughts. So just signing in 2 to 5 dreadnoughts at various points around the Keepstar, each of the dreadnoughts doing 10,000 FPS, pausing it. If it gets low enough, there won't be anything to stop it dying. They will. I'm sure it's in a plan why there's only T1 fighters used, that all of these fighters could be killed, and it'd still be worth killing this Keepstar.
You would have to clear the grid of hostiles
Yeah.
to keep this from going, and you couldn't do that with destroyers.
If there was a massive dread bomb that got brought in, it may draw firepower off the Keepstar, so it could theoretically get to a point where it is no longer being paused, because obviously there is something bigger and better to shoot. So if there was a massive dread ball, then it could quite literally save the Keepstar by providing a better target. But it's a long timer pause. It's 23 minutes 47 seconds. Sorry, 28.
And
Moving
think, and thanks to the Imperium and the $1 Million Battle, Keepstars now have 30-minute timers instead of 15, so that makes
Yes.
it more difficult to do.
Yeah, so it would have to be a big push to keep these fighters off of this Keepstar at this stage.
But it could be strategically a benefit, right? If it delays the march a bit, right? It could be worth actually sacrificing quite some value just to harass them to actually be required to actually invest more time in taking down that one Keepstar, right?
I mean, any hold up on the attacker side is going to give the Imperium more time to prepare for the defense of Delve or the evac of Delve, whichever one they decide to do. So, like, yeah, any delay is going to help.
Because Spoke today kind of said that they are strategically dismantling some of the infrastructure and all the structures in Delve, which is a considerable amount. But again, that's maybe very useful in time that they might actually want and need.
Yeah, the thing with Delve as region, same with Fountain, is the NPC area of this space. These spaces, they have safe haven groups. No one can stop you docking in that NPC station. Cannot dock supers and titans, but there is no method to evict you from that space. You are there to stay. Nothing can get you out. They can camp you in, but they can't force you out. They can't destroy your home. They can't kill your station.
Yeah,
So-
you can basically evacuate all your structures, right? And basically just plot them down in NPC node.
Right, which is not an issue unless you're someone like Ron or somebody that's got multiple Titans. Normally, before Keepstars, you couldn't dock your Titans or Supers anyway. You just logged off in them. That's why they call it coffins.
Yeah. The Keepstar Age brought around the change that I have multiple pilots in my corporation, multiple pilots in my alliance that have characters which literally have nicks, X's nicks, for example, where he created that pilot before injectors were a thing. He made it, specifically trained it to be his pilot, because in that area of time, you got in that ship, you sat in that ship.
Yeah, I was just saying. So what you would do is you train up an alt that could just sit in the ship itself and cloak, and then you'd be in a pause and you would jump out of it, and then your alt would jump in, so your main or whatever could go off and do other things until it was needed again.
Not even then, you even had people that made dedicated pilots that would just, they would focus into that ship, so then you didn't have your
Correct.
main in it, it was that pilot. And it used to be the thing you had to do. My
Correct.
first Titan, I'd never ejected from my first Titan for 2 years. We've got a pilot in our corporation that has been in his Titan for over 9 years now. It was 7 years in the same place.
And that was where some of the grief come from introduction of injectors, was people putting that much time into an alt just to fly a Titan or a Super, and then now it's just a matter of ISK in like a few seconds to get a Titan or Super alt.
So X-Men asked estimation to boom. I predict it's probably about 30 to 35%. Good guess, 32. So you'd probably be looking between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on how tie-dye. Obviously, with fleets swapping around, with corn fleets swapping around, moving, and various things, tie-dye does go up, so damage and stuff does go down over time, so it does stretch out the fights.
In the chat says at 32% right now. So
What's tie-dye at?
Tie-dye is currently at 22%.
it's up there.
Well, I was just thinking about the whole strategy of potentially picking or pulling down a lot of the potentially low-rigged structures in Delve, because then they will basically have them ready to either harass or repopulate if that actually develops, right? Because if all the things and structures are up for the attackers to cherry pick, that's at their advantage. But if they can replace something only when it's been lost, that's actually a harassment strategy, right?
Yeah, so it is very interesting lifestyle. It's a very nomadic style of you set up your camp, set up your tents, and then when someone comes to kick it over, you pull it all down, wait until they go and then put it all back up. It's very hermit kind of style, I think. And it is a major thing that Fountain has that no other regions really prosper from. Um, it's a very interesting side on that. When Decline, where Goonswarm was years ago, they didn't have that. When they got evicted from there, you was out. You used to be able to put stuff into the conquerable stations that were there. However, the conquerable stations no longer are a thing. They are now faction photos are. So even then, you can completely remove all safe space NPCs from player-owned Sov cannot from NPC. So they can put down a pause, put Titans and Supers in it, and have them sat there, or let them go to asset safety and retrieve them at a later date. Just current the ISK fee. So it is a very interesting thing that they are putting down there some of their infrastructure that's not critical, and it is a very smart thing to do. If you even if it's not 100% at threat, but it could be, and you could pull it down now, but wouldn't be able to later, then to minimize any potential losses, then I would say put it down. We had
But
the same
also,
thing.
it's also rolling up some potential barbed wire, as I keep calling it, because you can do harassment stuff with things like astrohuses on a massive scale if you have enough of them, and there's a lot, right? So having them available to pretty much just drop down whenever there's some strategic escalation around, say, a Keepstar, that's really harassment on a massive scale.
Is yeah. Um, a big thing as well is with the Forsaken Fortress update, we saw Goonswarm killing their own citadels. They decided that because the Satios had been there for so long, over a year, they weren't really in use. So they let them go abandoned and just destroyed them themselves with all drops that came out from players' assets repurposed back in to the Alliance. I happen to know of a pilot who lost his Titan B and got recirculated back. It did end up getting back to him. But Goontom's not adverse to having a short loss for a good gain. Because obviously these assets were never in use, and this was all before the NIP got reset. So it was more protecting themselves by saying, let's not give this to our enemies. Let's just take it for ourselves at a small loss at the moment.
And one of the issues with the especially Keepstars and Sotios is the rig's size and value, right? That they're kind of locked there. You don't really have. It's not efficient to take it down, so you kind of need to leave them up there.
Yeah. On average, I'd say an extra large rig is between 20 and 50 billion for a team. And that's not a inconsiderable amount of screwed. Even as big as Goonswarm are, a 20 to 40 billion loss is still going to be noticeable.
Well, I also think that's good because it kind of incentivizes you to protect it, right? A little bit more. I think like a lot of these are not happening. Just fights are not happening just because a lot of the stuff is looked at as expendable.
And I think someone like Dunk would also point out that one thing is the current valuation of those rigs. Another thing is actually replacing them, because there's simply not that many of these assets around to actually just replace, say, 10 or 15 Keepstars worth of T2 rigs.
Yeah.
You need to do that in house probably too.
Yeah, not even just T2 rigs. Even just I know someone who in a Keepstar that is due to perish soon. I was in Initiative Associates when they was rigging that, and the amount of salvage itself, he was buying all of the salvage for the region, good solid month just to try and get the parts he needs. So it's not even just the amount that's available; it's a large amount of resources to build it. I think it was something like 24,000 lens fluid, for example. If you went to buy that in Jita, you would begin to cause a spike in the market. Same thing with on the last stream about Keepstar prices. It isn't possible to go and buy all the parts you need for Keepstar right now because you would, even at the PI level, you would cause spikes in price, of which means that by the time you finish purchasing the needed, you're paying 30-40% over what it actually is worth.
Or more, because you would basically deplete those markets almost completely, and then they usually spike crazy, right?
So you need to. That's how I've been some of my work so cheap is you have to buy over time. You know, play the buy order game, play the when it's under this price, I'll buy it. You maintain that price level, do that market work, because otherwise you end up shooting yourself in the foot for later on.
And this kind of brings me on to Aerith. And one of the things that Aerith has talked about for ages is exactly this bottleneck of salvage material. And he's been investing in that heavily for years now. So there might actually be quite a lot on hangar floors in the Imperium hands to actually replace some of these things.
Just as well, not even just that, you also have things like when this war, when the reset was initially announced, all of the Scorch extra large ammo in Jita got bought out. There was 0 on market. Now, was that someone playing the market themselves or someone realizing, hang on, Revelations are the most used dreadnought days age, so we'll buy all the ammo. So the other side can't get it. Did one person from one group buy it? Did a entity buy it? Same with the scimitar prices. At one point, scimitars were selling for 400 million each, which is
Per hull
100
or for the
per
fully fitted?
per hull. I have trading records of me selling scimitars from that I produced 400 million, and they were costing. I buy mine in batches, so they only cost me 145 to 180 million each. Whereas now the prices have back down to normal, about 200 million each. But that initial spike, whether it be marketeers or people wanting to stock up for war, had a major impact.
It's one of the things about wars historically, and I also think that it is going to show up in this war if it actually starts to ramp up. That there's things being destroyed in wars that are not traditionally being destroyed. So if you have something like a daily traded volume of 5 of a specific ship, right? When you have war situations, the demand side just goes crazy because there's just so many of these things being destroyed that normally do not get destroyed at all. This is the same thing with, say, structures, supers, and titans. We don't see big losses like that on a regular basis. But when there is these big skirmishes, they completely evaporate, right? And that is what then spikes some very, very specific items and very specific related items, right?
Yeah, it's wars on this scale do have effects on market, and it will be felt for a long time. Not even just during this war, at the end of this war, you end up seeing big spikes. Obviously, it's not so much as an effective means now since they did the moon mineral rebalance. Previously, when regions were under siege or under attack, and that region was responsible for 40% of a moon export, like for example, technetium or chromium, things like that, used to be locked by constellations, by regions and areas of the map. Wars on these scales would prevent that mineral from going out to market, so prices of that mineral started to go up, like that began to be affected.
Well, we are potentially moving into a very, well, I think it's a very interesting period of EVE Online because if the attackers actually even succeeds to any degree, the war will not be over. The skirmishes afterwards will continue, right? Because then the groups will start then fighting over who's the next top dog, right? It's going to potentially lead to, if I'm not completely wrong, if Imperium gets really pushed, there will be a lot of struggles and a lot of warfare going on for the next 2 years. That's my guess.
Yeah. Yeah. This war will easily last the rest of this year, pushing into the next year for the time that Delve and 1DQ do fall. Just quickly, it seems like the PDS was activated and some Cormorant pilots were not tethered.
Lol.
I believe the PDS activation was in attempt to kill these Jackdaw fleets that have come in. So you see there are some Cormorant mechs that have just decided to populate out, and with PDS's podding as well, you obviously are not tethered. These pilots have had a swift exit from IGE. I don't believe any Jackdaws were attacked by the PDS or have fallen.
So it looks like the harassment thing is over, and now the demolition crew can go back to work.
I think a large number of the Cormorants did get out, but yeah.
Yeah, the
There
Cormorants warped off to a gate earlier.
Yeah, you see some intercepts back. I don't think any of their work has attempted to. So, Mention just put in chat, some people sent fighters after the Cormorants and they tried to PDS them. Yeah, so I don't think this timer has ever been under threat, and this Keepstar has likely been at damage cap since the initial fighters started to attack it. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't seen it tick down since I got into the system.
it's interesting to see as well with the stream we had yesterday for the J5A Keepstar. Tie-dye itself was at a larger percentage for the general. So the fight lasted a lot longer and the Keepstar kill took a lot longer. Obviously, this one's now approaching the 10% mark, and the stream's not even up for half as long. So Joe asked why they don't just sell the Keepstar. It's not a case of selling the structures. It has been known many times that an invading entity will make offers to purchase. It happened with Razor and Paternity, I believe, with some of the industry structures. It was a case of either we kill it or you sell it to us for this ISK. And so they obviously take the ISK option because otherwise it's dead. In this situation, I don't think Goontorm or Initiative would be willing to, because it's not like they have been forced out at this stage. If this Keepstar was sold to the attacking force, then that is an immediate Keepstar in very close proximity. I think it's just strategically they would never sell it anyway,
And
just
it's a
because of its
matter of
location.
pride.
Yeah, and you do have the pride form. Yeah, let's say if it was the last Keepstar in Fountain and there wasn't an attack planning on Delve, then it may be kind of a just get it under the rug kind of thing. But normally speaking, the sale of structures is normally reserved to the smaller ones, such as Athenors, maybe Tataras, Asbels, things like that. Satios and Keepstars, people like to shoot them and blow them up, so they're very rarely traded over. They are quite often, but it's not a common occurrence. But I think pride with initiative will definitely mean that none of these citadels are sold off. All of them will be killed. As well as, obviously, the big factor as well is the invaders are not looking to live in this area. Couple of little graphical issues there.
Light show.
It came at the same time that my headset was complaining me that its battery. Yeah, so we're still just seeing the fightable here. There are some blue fleets, which are the attacking side in this engagement, moving around slowly. Oh, that's a big Bulwark. Seems like the Goonswarm Destroyer gang did in fact get caught,
Yeah, it looks like they got caught.
and
And a lot of wrecks.
yeah. So I imagine it would probably be the Jackdaw fleet that caught them. Yeah, so that is pretty much the Goonswarm Destroyer fleet's gone. But the brilliant thing with that is the Cormorant fleets are so minuscule in value each that
35 million isk.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
More around 3 million isk.
Yeah, 3 to 5.
35 is a meme though.
Oh right,
Yes.
that's what they were selling.
Oh yeah, the joyous meme of a pandemic horror pilot who bought a Cormorant model for 35 million.
Oh, when you gotta have one.
Ooh, Eve Magarum is saying that the Cormorants got smart bombed, which is quite impressive because I have personally tried doing that many times. They're normally very good at avoiding that, so very well done if they did manage to catch them.
I love a good pipe bomb.
Yeah. I say, but the brilliant thing with that fleet is it's more the funness of destroying the fleet, not so much the ISK value, because I say that fleet's worth less than $1 billion ISK. So the chat is saying they whooped the same way too many times from Baltic, so it is literally just a case of repetition is their enemy.
Yeah, pipe bombs are fun.
So you've just got bubbles going up on these pods, and they'll be rapidly disappearing the grid. And they're being sent in swift trips home. Tide is now up to 15%. So obviously with the fleets being on grid here with the governments, they are got 3 full fleets around range of these pods. Get on as many kill miles as possible, these pilots.
Looks like the Keepstar is about to explode, maybe.
No, we've still got plenty of. It is interesting if you look at a zoomed out grid here. You just see you got the carrier fleet up top, these surrounding structures. So one thing I got asked about offline yesterday was why are there structures surrounding the Keepstar? It's for the similar reason that there normally is you cannot anchor another citadel within 1,000 kilometers of another. So if you have a 1,000-kilometer bubble around your Keepstar, means that anyone who wants to anchor another structure, they have to do a further 1,000 kilometers. So you'll see they have citadels. Normally they are smaller and cheap. So these ones are rice halos. They'll put a small clone bay on them to allow pilots to have multiple pods in 0-0.
And to keep it from being in low power.
Yeah, and just to, I say, keep it low power, keep it from being abandoned, and they'll just dot them around just to give a kind of a sphere of defense. I say they've got them around the edges, but obviously the above one is belonging to Pandemic Horde. And there isn't one below, so there wasn't. These weren't designed more for protecting the anchoring area, such as Fortress Delve. I believe that has large grid around it of structures.
So, do you think there'd be more of a defense without the facts and resist nerfs from Imperium at this point?
I don't believe so. I don't think they had a major impact in this kind of engagement. This is a very one-sided tactic because obviously to defend it, you either have to commit large amounts of Iskin value dreads to destroy carriers, or large amount of numbers of fleets to destroy the fighters. These fortified attacks are Keepstar attacks are very difficult to defend. They are very attacking sided because the majority of the value of the attacking force is up in a surrounded Astra house that is really hard to get at. Previously with the MTAC-0 fight with Dreadnoughts dying, not Dreadnoughts, Titans dying left and right over that Keepstar, that was before this tactic was really kind of developed. So Titans were mainly used, beam Titans. But now Titans are really not used in this kind of engagement. They're kind of in a little unused area at the moment, aside from strategically. So now the Keepstar is getting low enough that we're going to have multiple groups here to make sure they're on the kill mails. So there's 2,700 in local, so I imagine there'll easily be 2,200 pilots wanting to make sure that they are on this kill mail. So we're in the last little segment of the wheel for its structure health. So X-Men asked, why did it take until now for PanFam to attack these? So the major implementation on this is Pandemic Horde owns sovereignty in the systems. So initially with the entrance into Fountain, which the name escapes me, D4, when Initiative had to defend their Fortizar, they turned on their Cyanojammers. But Cyanojammers are very brilliant structure in that it can turn it on and off in about 5 to 6 minutes. So they moved all of their Titan fleet into the system and they turned on their jammer. Nothing else could get in yet. As mentioned, D4KU. So no other attacking entity could silo into that system. That put a real hindrance on the attacking side because suddenly you're going against this massive fleet that you can't get at with a similar force. They are there first. Same way, if this Keepstar attack was not owned in sovereignty and there was a Sino German system, all of these carriers would not be siloed in. And the method would be different. You'd have to deploy a fleet to attack a Sino jammer, then you'd bring in your capitals to attack the Keepstar. So when Pandemic Horde took ownership of the iHub, then there is no Sino jammer available for the defending force. So it is literally the system is wide open.
But they also almost cleaned up behind them on all the iHubs, right? So there was no surprises.
Yeah, so initially with Initiative's defense was quite solely on those silent jammers. But once a few of them started to fall, if you were following the coverage that we've done on Talking Stations, you can see there was a shift that came up where they didn't use Titans in defense anymore. They used the carriers, and then Initiative lost a large amount of carriers to a Dread Bomb. So there was that shift over, which did obviously, and like we said, Panic Horde and the attacking force here cleaned up behind them, made sure that there was no iHerbs left behind, so they didn't get to a certain point and realize they'd being attacked from behind. It's as they push through, they're just clearing the path as they go. The IGE iHub, I don't believe it was. So it's a bit of a interesting one to consider. In terms of the attacking side, they have attempted to reinforce it for a large amount of time. But there wasn't any credible attacks, I'm going to refer to it as. More opportunistic, can we reinforce it today? Oh, yes, we managed to reinforce it. Okay, but then Initiative shows up for the defense. It was under attack for a large amount of time, just not anything major. When Panic Horde and the attack force decided, okay, now we need it, that's when the big defenses, the big attacking did happen, where there was 2 to 3 fleets to ensure the Entosis went ahead, to ensure it did get killed. But when IGE was in its last time for its iHub, that is after Initiative had announced and was beginning to withdraw. So, is that the D-scan? We're sitting at whole 11 FPS greater than yesterday. It was sitting around 1.5 to 2 average yesterday. So the tricky part there, when he asked, they could have. Sounds like they could have kept the iHub and Fountain if they wanted. It's a very difficult thing. This initiative is outmanned. I believe the on paper ratio is 4 to 1. So there is a large imbalance in their pilots. So in pure numbers games, they would have eventually fallen. They did very well to hold on for the 26 days. I believe they announced it was 26 days. They kept the attacking force at bay, but it's kind of once the first station had gone, kind of just kept on that momentum.
But it was still, it felt a bit like token resistance, right? As if, well, they were holding the hill a bit to delay, but not really invest that much and sacrifice a lot of value.
Well, I mean, to actually stop the march here, they're going to have to invest value. There's no way that they might slow it down some, but not anything. It's going to mean anything unless they commit actual, actual resources on the field.
I just noticed in local, can we have a little chuckle with the fact that Killer B is here in his monitor, but obviously he has no method to get on this kill mail because a monitor cannot have any offensive module apart from a target painter.
Yep.
And you can't target paint a Keepstar. So Killer B is calling for civilian guns on monitors.
I think this is one of those cases where we do a CCP. Please give them at least a light drone capacity so they can get on the mail.
But so this was raised yesterday. I'm gonna go into cinema mode for this Keepstar. Obviously, sit and watch it. It was a similar thing yesterday in that there were pilots that were in chat that claimed they had Logi pilots swapping out, ejecting and boarding other ships to ensure that everyone got on the kill mail because the logistic drones were just being killed by the PDS, so they couldn't actually get in range because the PDS range is 30 kilometers from the edge. light drones can only shoot at about 2 kilometers. I'm sorry to say, Xmond, I don't believe you'll be getting here. You are 27 jumps out and it has 4%.
Hey, I have a good suggestion for CCP. How about giving the target painter the ability to do 1 DPS?
I mean, or just lock structures. Like if it could just lock and paint a structure, that really be all it needs to happen there.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm semi-serious, right? Wouldn't that also potentially solve the problem of Logi not being on kill mails? If a Logi effect did something, right? You could actually just switch it out and do effectively damage instead.
Oh, that might be okay for the armor. With the shield, you'd be like shield Logi, you'd be, giving up tank for that, and that wouldn't be a good trade off, I don't think.
Yeah, it's with Logi, it's always a tricky one. I was just having a look there. I realised things were going slow. Tie-dye is now at maximum with fleets wanting to get on this kill mail. If you see, we have 2 fleets at the top. Fleet on the right hand side is now moving up to Astra House. Another fleet down the bottom. So all of these pilots now are shooting this structure, and the server has so much more calculations to do as it did yesterday. So it really has now ground to a maximum tie-dye.
Really, the ultimate fix for Logi pilots is like if you're repping something, you should get on the kill mail of anything it kills.
Yeah, I know it's a system that CCP have mentioned a few times that they do care about, and they are intending to try and find a balance and a method of having it work. But kill mailers themselves are a very old part of, so there are very interesting mechanisms they will have to work.
Well, CCP's been doing a lot of good changes to the game here lately, and a lot of work to the O code. So maybe that can actually happen soon.
Yeah. See, with kill mails, I remember a time when Titans were invulnerable from E-War, and when I was a new pilot in Eve, I was so excited because there was a big Titan fight, and this was when there was only a few hundred Titans in the game, if that many. And I was like, oh, I need to get a ship to go there. Me not knowing any better, I made a Raven with as many target painters in the mids as possible. And yeah, I didn't get on a single Titan kill mail.
Oof.
Jojo Russ said DBRB claimed there was 5.1k players on the CO2 Keepstars. No, CO2 keeps more than 2.2k Imperium members on it, which is part of those 2. You can see. So what DBR mentioned on the stream was from one side. So at the time, it was pretty much everyone attacking at that Keepstar. So that could be declared as one side. It's a very different thing to the member breakdown. Obviously, with it this time, the member breakdown for that Keepstar is now this war front. So we have, like I say, a split in the middle: 2.2k Imperium, 2.2k Legacy. The side attacking that is a very different. So Mencho said, "Remember the stupid times of Doomsday's do Sinos?" I do indeed remember that. I remember sitting in a pause and seeing a Sino come up on grid, and you hear it called out over Mumble, which isn't the time, and the FC's just immediately called, "Everyone warp out," and me going, "Oh, I'm saving the pause." This is before I had seen any Titans. I'm saving the pause. I was told you can't get damage. He went, "Titans don't count." and then destroy. Then I had my ship blow up because the Titans could damage on grid, regardless if you're using save pos.
We are in cinematic mode right now. For everybody new, we're just waiting on this Keepstar to explode.
Yeah. The Keepstar is at 2% and falling. There is maximum tie-dye system now, so time is going a lot slower. 10% of normal speed. So every module activation, every ship maneuver, you can see there the command burst in the center, the blue one, as well as the orange ones at the top. They are normally done a lot quicker, but they're not slower.
Urban Legend 1, thanks for your subscription. That's awesome.
Very much. Twitch Prime is a gorgeous thing. For those that don't know, you can use Twitch if you have Amazon Prime. You can link it with Twitch and use it for any of your favorite streamers. You get one a month. Basically, it is a free subscription to any one stream of your choice. So, Urban, thank you for choosing it on Talking Stations. So we are mere seconds away from having this Keepstar destroy itself. The FPS is, I'm happy to say, higher than yesterday. We are at over 5 times the FPS of yesterday's Keepstar, so it'll be interesting to see.
I do find it a little bit funny and relevant to mention the fact that one of the reasons that CCP have decided not to try and completely nerf asset safety is because the servers don't really have the ability to roll all the stuff that's in these things.
But this was an interesting thing that occurred. So for those that don't know, the Keepstar is actually, people are calling out that it's been destroyed, so we'll see that explosion, but I'll just talk for a moment. I was the pilot who planned out the Forsaken Fortress drop of 23 T2 BPOs. So I had a lot of questions and comments about that, with which did I use the test server to kill these structures to find out what they had? And my answer was no, because it's against test server rules and it's just not in the spirit of the game. But a lot of people did. With that, some old faction fortizars were destroyed on the test server before they had the invulnerability to go abandoned, of which meant that I think at record it was over 2,000 containers dropped from one citadel, of which caused the test server, which isn't meant to handle these kind of loads, to pretty much ground to a halt.
No. Yeah, that
Yeah.
thing is not built to run those things.
I remember when they first transitioned from Conquest Stations to Citadels.
There it goes.
Here's the Keepstar Explosion for you guys.
In slow mo too.
It is in 10% of normal speed.
You can always take a video of it and speed it up post.
But yeah, I remember when they first made Conquest Stations, they tried to boot the servers after they did a transition of assets, of which they then had to immediately stop the servers because, and I quote from one of the CCP devs, one station contained more assets than Eve, it seemed. Because they couldn't reveal which one, but yeah, there was a large amount of assets in these stations. So naturally, with Faction Fortizars, they don't have that issue anymore.
And they were doing that just to see what the enemy had, right? To see what they had in their fortizars, not really to plan on attacking it, because it'd have to go into low power, and nobody's going to let a structure like that go into low power.
Correct. Yeah. A good example would be, for example, this war. It would be really beneficial to know what assets are in Hotpib. So if you went to the test server, and Hotpib station happened to be in low power or an abandoned state, you could kill it and have a literal view of every single asset of every pilot in that station. But they've since CCP have implemented a change, so on the test server that no longer has that happen. Here's the explosion of the Keepstar. See the shockwave coming out, followed by a large orange fireball.
Is this one of those examples of CCP doing physics backwards again?
Nice.
I'm pretty sure that I should see the fireball before I see a shockwave, or am I just being dumb?
No, you're accurate.
But in space, fire is contained because there's no oxygen.
But the light from the fire is not.
And there's no sound either. But
And
I
doesn't
mean-
a shockwave need matter to go through?
But the shockwave in this instance is the matter expanding out.
Then it would be with the fire, wouldn't it? Because that's
And
what's
not
pushing
on a
it.
horizontal plane.
Well, excellent coverage. Sully, this is great with Manixar, Caleb, Rags, and others.
I've had a massive education today. It was really good. I was very, very entertained and educated.
I was listening the whole time. It's good questions, good answers.
So X-Men says, what happens now? Will there be some Merry Fleet combat squatting, some goon territory, some hunting? So typically after these, we may end up seeing it in a moment. There is a large congregation that comes in the centres, so it's more looting the field, enduring things, get home safely, as well as obviously you have to extract your fleets. So I dare say there is a couple of Titans on grid. We saw the Bean Cannon yesterday from Pandemic Horde. He is their designated bridge Titan, so they'll be getting these fleets out, getting back to their staging systems. There may be some roams out there. I believe there are still some structures to come to be destroyed, so there may be some more fleets going out to kill them. But the main role for today is to kill this structure.
Yeah. Can the audience hear me or not? I don't know if they can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Yep, you're coming through on stream, Metal.
All right, good.
Hey, somewhere in here, there's a Rockwell pilot. He is likelihood is he has picked up a large amount of the assets that would have dropped from the fit, as well as maybe even the salvage of the structure if they was able to. But he is now protected by this lovely Ferrex fleet. We warp it up safely to his Astra house up top. Let's have a watch.
Someday we'll all go to that Astra house up top.
the great big Astra house in the sky.
Yeah.
So here we can see the carriers are now jumping out, as well as the Titan is bridging out the first fleet. These carrier pilots have called all their drones back, and they're now jumping out to their safe system, where they can dock up and choose to do something else for the rest of their evening.
A very important question. Do you think it's an Athenor down below?
No, I think it'll be a right arrow.
Yeah, probably.
It is interesting that the attacking force has put the Astra houses above the Keepstars in each situation that I've seen. I wonder if there will be any other orientations of Astra houses.
Yeah, who says there's no north in space?
Yeah, well, it's all relative to your camera perspective.
So I'm just reading here 277 ships destroyed in this system while this happened. Or
Yes,
Right,
there was Yeah, there's a lovely cormorant gang that did indeed get smart bombed. Unfortunately, we missed the smart bomb. We turned around to see a large pile of wrecks, but
You were ahead of your time.
yeah, there's a bunch of wrecks with some pods that were soon sent on their way. And it was Baltic put in chat that it seems that they warped one too many times from the same place.
And they got chemoed.
Was that Baltic, he said?
Yeah, Baltic one.
I love that guy.
Yep.
And
When Pandemic Horde was first doing the Eagle Doctrine move up to get out to the invasion of Falcon, Baltic brought his Megathron as his Eagle ship.
He did indeed. I remember watching his talk at I believe it was Eve Vegas, and yeah, I remember watching his talk and because I remember flying in ship fleets and having that coverage of why is there never mind was the answer you end up getting. This flagship Megathron that would just defy all odds to come home. Yeah, so you can see there's beam cannon literally firing Pandemic Horde fleet home. The Leviathan is currently without a fleet that I can see tethered next to him, but I'm sure he will have his soon enough.
Question from chat. Merkin says, did you guys watch the Lantorn fight? Did we cover it already? We did at the last 10 minutes or so of Talking in Stations, the Sunday broadcast. We talked about the fight. Not in great detail about the kill mail, but we had just seen it. It was just produced as we were finishing the show.
Yeah, from talking with people, it seems like both sides had a good brawl. There was a good fight, but it did inevitably fall. I believe.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did inevitably fall, and yeah, so
I think that was an interesting and important fight for many reasons. But Snuff's basically summer home or their vacation home. This was their staging in the area. This is basically the triangle where, what is it? What do they call those boys? Something boys, Amamaki boys, or Amamaki police, or Pandemic Legion's old vacation home. That triangle in Minmatar space, right outside of Cinq Liaison, sits in an area that's highly trafficked. And so it's good for fighting and, pirating. And right next door in Secede, I think, is their rival, which is Siege Green.
Siege Green.
Yeah. So that's a big loss for Snuff to lose their foothold in that area. So that was one of the reasons it was a big deal. The other reason is the allies that were on both sides were interesting. You had people from Providence picking sides, and they picked two different sides. So it was interesting to see Providence, Provi holders split in half over that structure. That was another interesting aspect.
Correct. Red Alert joined Wrecking Crew and Siege Dream, while CBA sided with Snuff.
And now they are essentially enemies, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah. So I've just placed the Kimmel from Z-Kill of the Keepstar. It didn't have rigs fit. So the interesting thing is, did it before this fight or did it not? Because the J5A
I'm
did.
pretty sure it got stripped.
The J5A Keepstar did indeed have rigs, so it'll be interesting to see. Because they made it so you can't pull out the rigs whilst it's in reinforced, didn't they?
Right, you can't make any changes once it's in the final timer. I think the shield timer you can, but once the armor timer's gone, you can't.
Why would you want to rip out the rigs in this case?
Well, I mean, for the kill mail cost, and you don't want the salvage. They could still drop, right?
So they can't. It is more. It reduces the value of the kill mail. So it is. It's the same thing as pulling out your implants if you die in an expensive ship with pods. It's just
yeah.
to lighten the killboard, I believe.
Rigs on structures don't drop, do they? Because they don't on ships.
No.
It has no
Sadly,
effect
no,
on
but they
anything.
should.
Okay,
I-
that's what I was wondering. I wasn't for sure.
On
Yeah, so
anything. So rigs on anything do not drop.
Exactly. Again, which they should. Should be the
Yeah,
other way around. You shouldn't be able to take them out, and you should be able to remove them.
You should be able to salvage them.
You
Right,
should definitely
exactly.
be able to drop them.
I would quite like to see if a ship is fit with T2 rigs and you salvage that wreck, then you have a chance to get some of you salvage. That'd be quite a good change. I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely. You salvage it, right? Because it's a modification to a ship. So if there's a wreckage and you go there and you use your blowtorch and saw it in half and whatever, you should be able to maybe salvage a rig. I think that would be a pretty cool change to salvaging and make a career
I
out
think
of it.
they should make it so that the tier 2 salvage drones can only salvage the rigs.
Yeah. But the interesting thing will be is Keepstars themselves do provide a large chunk of value from it. I believe between 5 and 8 billion of salvage from a Keepstar, maybe more. So imagine if the Keepstar was rigged. Obviously, these rigs between 20 and 40 billion each. What value would you then get from a Keepstar rig? But
Which
I
would be
think
nice.
I think it'll be a good change.
I think if you're going to salvage something as big as a structure, any structure, it should take a long time. So
Well, it's because if you wanted this whole in the old days they talked about using things like tokens to make a limitation or a hard limit on things like Titans, and they've also kind of aired that thought again with structures. And I think it's a mistake. Instead, they should just make rigs that are really, really valuable and potentially very hard to build. So maybe make that the bottleneck. So if that benefit is so big, then they become a soft token, right? That everyone is chasing and is salvaging every time there's a big fight with either Titans or structures, because the rigs would almost be worth more than the actual thing you're killing.
But that's the case in current Citadels. Is a rigged Astra House will be worth more from the rigs alone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a feature, right? Because then you're basically aggressing them and taking them down to get the rigs, right? Because it's so much more expensive to try and source them yourself. It's a much more, agency-based design than this hard limit of tokens. I don't think a game developer should ever put hard limits in a game. It's just bad.
Yeah, I don't think. I think the token idea is one they're possibly bouncing around. I don't see it working for the same reason of I've had people suggest possible solutions being a limit of a ship type per system, so you can only have 10 Titans in the system, for example. Well, then you'd still just one side would put all those Titans. Say if it was 200, one side would put 200 Titans in the system, then no more Titans can come in.
It's just a bad solution, but I do think that there should maybe be a hard limit of how many Titans or Supers can actually dock in a structure, because I do think it's a little bit silly that there's potentially 10 times the actual mass docked inside it. It's like, what is this, a bag of holding?
Then you get structure spam.
Yeah. And that also brings into question the limitless state of structures with in the olden days, Satios didn't exist. So to build a Titan, you had to put down a POS. In that POS, you had to put down a capital ship assembly array, of which you had a hard limit per POS. I believe 2 at maximum. So with that, you couldn't build 50 Titans in the same station. You had to have 50 POSes, of which each had their own cost.
Oh, a quick correction about yesterday. We were looking at the aggressors, and they had bubbles all around them. And we said that they were possibly defensive bubbles. But in retrospect, whenever you have capitals, you bubble them up so if they get disconnected, they don't fly off. Or it delays the exit so you can actually rope it down. I think if you scram it or something, it keeps it from flying off. And so that might have been a defense against disconnects rather than a defense against other ships coming into the area. Also, maybe for the subcaps that are bubbled, it's also a defense to get booshed or kidnapped, as can be done with micro warp drives.
You can still boost through bubbles, but I think it's the defensive side of preventing capitals from warping out is a good feature. Yeah, that I didn't think of yesterday.
Yeah, I know with
That's
supers
fun.
they do that. They definitely bubble up supers because those are more expensive, and when you have a bunch of them together, they're likely to disconnect, especially with unstable servers. It was a big deal during X47 to, and that era of fighting, bubbles were always a big feature. People
And
were getting
also, the boosting got nerfed too, so they can't take as many ships now. So I don't know if we'd see that as much as we used to.
Yeah, I forgot. You can't be booshed if you're scrammed, but you can if you're in a bubble.
Right, you take the bubble with you. Depending on
Yeah.
what type of-
I think the change to the boosting was beneficial in that it prevented fleets like the Raven fleet from jumping around each other. But I remember the first fleet fights where you saw them and you just see Logi wings just disappear because they would get taken 100 kilometers away from their fleet, and it's turned the tides of a few fights I was in at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, many of us.
I remember before they even hit the game, they were on the test server for a few weeks, and I think some Russian guys had figured out the double micro warp trick. So they would jump onto anybody that was hanging outside of a station, and they would kidnap you and jump you out 200K and then kill you before you had a chance to escape or get rescued. And that all happened before these things were even in the game.
Yeah, they warp in at 100, then they jump 100 to get you, jump you 100 out, and then all of a sudden you've got no friends and they can't even warp you from undock.
Right, because you're not far enough away. Brilliant move. Hey, so how many people showed up in local today? I heard 24.
2,600 maxed out, around 2,600.
Yeah, 2,600 is pretty much what we got to. Way below what I thought, but yeah.
I remember my 2,501.
Is that what you said? I think I guessed 3,600. I meant 2,600 because I thought it would be about 800 less. So
I don't know. You have to say what you said.
Technically, I win.
Is there bear involved? Because if there is, I got it right.
Well, we can guess for the next one, right? Like first Keepstar was 3,400. This Keepstar, what did you say, 2,600?
2,600, yeah.
So what do you think about next time?
I think, based on today's numbers to yesterday's, I think we'll hit 2K for tomorrow.
Where is the next one?
Load up my list.
Isn't it CTAC N4? I want to say. We'll check.
We have a Keepstar in C-N tomorrow at 1,800.
What was it? CTAC N?
CTAC N, yeah.
What's the last digit? CTAC what? N?
4D.
I got it. Okay. CTAC N4. Okay. You have to say that because I believe there's a CTAC N in Aquarius. I might be wrong about that.
Yeah, but the fight's in Fountain, isn't it?
Yeah, but when you say CTAC N, you could be talking about Aquarius. So you have to say that last digit, CTAC N4.
I shall try to remember that.
Yeah, when you do a search, you need at least 3 letters.
Yeah, but C-N is 3 letters.
No. There was a problem because the search, you needed 3 letters before it could search. And a lot of people would, do like HY TAC, and they wouldn't know the 3rd letter. And the TAC didn't count as a letter.
Oh, old school, yeah.
So when you used it to try to search for that system, you could never find it because nobody ever refers to it past the first 2 letters. They fixed that, though. I believe they fixed that. Now the TAC does count as a letter.
So local wind system is at 480 and dropping ever more rapidly. We see there the Titans. There are only 2 Titans today. There was 4 yesterday, but they are bridging out the last of their fleets. And down there with all those blue wrecks is where the Keepstar once was. Interesting to see that there's now white arrows surrounding just an empty space.
This is the black hole evidence that something was there before, but you can't see anything. So what's going on with the initiative now? What are they thinking? What should they be thinking about? Has this all just been psychologically dealt with?
Yeah, I think this will have a impact on morale because unfortunately, no matter on best efforts, there will still be people who know of others who have assets in this structure that have now gone into safety, such as Super Titans, if they have not been logged off in them. The unfortunate thing is if a pilot is logged off in his Titan in that structure, he will now spawn in space in that ship, meaning he is at risk. So, although prior to the war, there would have been people getting in contact, a lot of people coming back to the game to make sure these ships get moved or arranging for movement of them or sales. So, we'll have there will be some morale impact on the line members because everyone knows someone that may have one, or they weren't able to get everything out in time because of real life circumstances. So,
Even just your stuff, it's a main staging. It's home for people.
Right.
Definitely be watching numbers with all the destruction that's happening here in Fountain, plus Boat stating that they're kind of starting to take down some structures in Delve. I'd definitely be watching Imperium numbers on Dotland the next few days.
Yeah, what a show we had earlier today. It was just fun as could be. Question from Defiant here. No, that's not the question from Defiant. The question is from Crawdaddy. Will they continue to push into Delve or stop at Fountain? Is Delve even worth taking?
Well, their goal is to wipe Delve out. That's the end goal. And if they don't do that, I think Test is in a lot of trouble. If the North kind of back off after Fountain, I think Test would be in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah, because then they are participating in the sucker punch, so the fallout would be massive.
yeah, I think the plan will have to evolve with Pennant Horde and NC and others joining up again with the Southern Front because the South assault front isn't able to push through as they'd like. There are soft grounds being made in Quirius, but it is being very slow, and it is a lot of there are a lot of delays there against against Goonstorm just from their pure numbers game and the home field advantage. So I imagine once Fountain is clean, so to speak, there will be a joint effort again.
But so far, Test has been holding the line there in Paragon, G Magic, and TCAG. So that's good. And then the North's been making progress for Test and them. Anybody else got any comments?
I'm just reading through and seeing if there's anything else that we missed on chat.
I was listening to or watching one of the sort of Imperium shows a while ago, must have been over 6 months. And Matani was talking about how there was another area in space that he had his eye on that he thought would be more productive than Delph. And maybe this could turn into a situation where they could move to where that was. I can't remember the system he was talking about
Well,
now.
I think that was Oasa, and
Yeah, it was.
it's taken by Fraternity at the moment.
Yeah, that's what say. Fraternity lives here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be the drone regions, I think, and he's not going to be able to evict PetFem if he gets evicted from Delph.
Yeah, there's also the logistical sense of it is the absolute opposite end of Eve. Drone. So, for those who don't know, Drone Lands has always been a very lucrative place, but not many people ever wanted to really live there. Olden days, there was Legion of Exdeath that was there, Red Alliance, because it used to be rather than the rats having bounties, they used to drop called drone goo, which, when refined, could be used to build ships, regular materials. So, whereas bounties were a set amount of ISK, you used to get more drones because naturally you had more steps. And so, it wasn't unrealistic that during the time there, there was building carriers daily, supers every few weeks, just from those drones themselves. Over time, that's still, even though it shifted away from the drone goo, it's still very lucrative space, very low security. There's no NPC solve, and so it's still a very good hold.
And now one of the main reason why people complain about it is because it only gives bounties and not any loot.
All right. Well,
Still in the boonies, though.
yeah. So you guys, thank you very much, Sully, especially you for hosting this and putting it on, and the guys that helped you out with it, Manic Sar, and Caleb. We're gonna raid over to Oz. If you guys want to know more about finance, this is the guy to watch. He has a show, and we will see you tomorrow for the daily show. Do you have any last thoughts, Sully, before I move it over?
No, it's been a pleasure hosting, and I should see you tomorrow at the next Keepstar,
Great. We'll be
either
back.
on stream or in person.
That's right. We'll be back tomorrow. Do you guys have any last thoughts, Madaskar and Caleb?
I'm good.
All right. All right. Thanks. We're going to start the raid now. And also, if you can, YouTube, catch Talking in Stations. Today's episode was just fun as could be. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for showing up today. We will see you later.